This Week in Politics on KSFY. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen. Tonight we're going to be spending some time with Sioux Falls mayoral candidate Paul TenHaken. For the last decade, he has been at the helm of ClickRay, a tech-focused marketing company here in Sioux Falls. And now he's running for the city's top job. We began by asking him why he thinks he is the candidate for the job.
So I think it's just the stage of life I'm at. You know, I'm 40 years old, so I'm at this crux where I can reach up to the older voter and have credibility, but I can reach down to the millennials. I can reach over to the business sector, because I've been in that world, reach over to the nonprofit sector. And so I just feel that Sioux Falls is ready for the new generation of leadership. We're ready to pass the baton to our next generation of leader.
How do you define leadership?
Oh, that's a great question. How do you define leadership? So to me, a good leader is someone who is a consensus builder, who is an empowering person, who gets people to come alongside them in a way that they feel valued, and also someone who leads in a humble servant leadership fashion.
What could we expect from a TenHaken administration? What is it specifically that you want to get done?
You know, first and foremost, I feel that we really need to start getting serious about the narcotics growth we have in Sioux Falls. And I say that, and I know that sounds like a politician-y answer to talk about crime and narcotics, but when you crack down on your narcotics activity, it lowers your crime rate, it improves your workforce, it lowers your poverty rate. The second thing, though, is I think we have to look out and say, what does our workforce as a city look like 20 years from now? And 20 years from now, 80% of our workforce is going to be, you know, what we currently call millennials. So how are we as a city attracting, recruiting, retaining younger workers?
I want to go back to that narcotics issue that you brought up for a second. How do we effectively fight that? Is it public awareness? Do you want to budget more for police officers? What are you thinking there?
You know, I'm looking at this as a kind of a three-legged stool approach. You know, you have to do enforcement. So yeah, in some ways, our PD needs to be better resourced for drug task force agents and fugitive task force agents, some areas where I think we're maybe a little light. Mm-hmm. But there's also the prevention piece, the prevention education piece, getting into the school districts at the right time and making sure that we're properly funding prevention education in the school district and working with the school district. But then that third leg, that's probably the most important leg, is the treatment leg and the rehabilitation leg. And how are we getting these cyclical offenders out of this cycle of tying up our court system, tying up our jail cells, costing the city and county a lot of money.
We are in a 5-year cycle of setting records for new construction permits. Last year it was $750 million in construction permits that were issued. Do you see yourself as being able to continue that record growth trend? And if you don't, does that represent some type of failure?
To answer the second question first, no. Because I think there's times in, whether it's in business or in city government, when growth for growth's sake can sometimes be a hindrance. So I look at my own life in the private sector when I was running a company, and we had one year when we said, okay, our goal this year is to be flat. We don't want to hire anybody. We don't want to grow our revenues. We just need to kind of hit the pause button and make sure that we've kept up with the growth we've had for the last 4 or 5 years. So to me, it's not a huge feather in the cap to say we're having record year-over-year growth if some of those other things are slipping.
Looking at the other side of that coin, do you think this is possibly a situation where we're growing too much too fast? Or is it just right?
I don't think we're growing too fast, but I do think we have to be very cognizant of the effects of growth, especially in a community like Sioux Falls where we have a lot of urban growth. And urban growth creates the need for more infrastructure, which costs money. It creates transportation needs with public transportation because we don't have the density that a public transportation system usually needs. So I don't think it's too much, but we also just want to be sure that we're growing in a smart fashion too.
You're hoping to replace two-term mayor Mike Huther. Do you think there are more similarities between yourself and the current mayor, or more differences?
So in some ways, I'd say there's probably a lot more differences than similarities. I'll start with the similarities in that he came from a business background and was not a politician, and I'm kind of stepping into this in the same way. I'm not a politician. I'm not an ex-city councilor. I haven't served in public office. But I think my leadership style is very different than probably our existing administration. It's much more inclusive, much more consensus building. And in a lot of ways, I think it would be much more open and transparent than we've also seen recently. With some of the decisions we've made in City Hall, I don't necessarily disagree with the decisions, but I do have a problem with the way we've made them.
You said that you're trying to look ahead 20 years to what the workforce needs are going to be for this city. 2 decades from now, what do you think they'll be?
That's a great question. And so the way that I look, my background's in technology, and in technology you have to always be on the forefront of emerging trends. And so we as a city, for instance, are investing a lot of money in a new parking ramp we're going to build downtown. And me as kind of a crystal ball guy is saying, will we even need parking ramps in 20 years, 25 years? Is parking going to be a thing? Will we all own our own cars, or will we be, renting cars, and will we have self-driving cars that we won't even need to park our own cars? Workforce is going to be a challenge in the future, especially with the amount of young workers who aren't entering the trades, aren't entering the tech sector, or excuse me, the VOTech. We got to continue to look at how do we create an appetite amongst our students, amongst our juniors and seniors and sophomores in high school to say, hey, as a plumber or a construction foreman or an electrician, I can have a great career. So we have to continue to look at how we're fostering those work fields as well.
One of the things that you're talking about just in this interview, but also on the campaign trail, is that you're not a politician. You don't have that political background. You're not a previous city councilman. How does that free you up? What are you hoping the electorate gets from knowing that you don't have that political background?
So to me, the positive of that is that I come into City Hall with no preconceived notions or agenda. So I come in with a clean slate. I don't have any preconceived notions about how we're doing planning services or how we're doing the finance department or how we've been running streets for the last 8 years. It's a clean slate from day one. I would have a chief of staff in my administration. A chief of staff would supplement me where I need help with policy decisions or urban planning decision, development decisions.
So it really would be an outside-the-box approach, one that maybe we haven't seen here in the city.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I would be a very different type of mayor than Sioux Falls has ever seen, and I say that in that, not that we would just shake everything up, but I have a big desire to be a servant leader in this community, unite the nonprofit sectors, unite the church sector, look at some of the challenges we have in Sioux Falls and say, okay, this isn't a city problem, this isn't a private sector problem, this is a we problem. How can we address this together, the totality of our community, versus everyone always looking to government and saying, government, fix this. Well, we'll do what we can, but we as Sioux Falls need to lock arms and approach some of these things, and I feel like I can unite people to do that.
And we thank Paul TenHaken for spending some of his time with us tonight.